All right. Hi, my name is Katelyn Wiens,
And I'm Braelyn Menzies.
and we did our spotlight presentation on assessment and evaluation for L2. So first we need to talk about the difference between assessment and evaluation. Assessment are procedures used to obtain information about student performance, and evaluation is the decision making we do based on student performance, which is then when teachers start editing their teaching strategies and how they're teaching their lessons. It's important to remember that for assessments, it can vary from school to school, state to state, district to district. It varies all across the board. So it's important to remember what school you're at and making sure you're keeping up to date on assessments. Now let's talk about formative and summative assessment. A formative assessment is an assessment that happens during a lesson and lets teachers know where students are progressing related to targets. So this can be a check for understanding. Do you understand that a squared plus b squared plus c equals c squared? Something as simple as that. And then a summative assessment is the opposite. It happens at the end of a lesson or a unit or a school year, and it lets you know if a student can move on to the next big chunk of material and they're able to move from section to section. So making sure you balance out formative and summative is really critical in this.
Yeah, and you cannot move on unless your students are proficient in what you just taught them in the huge lesson or one thing that you taught them, or the end of the year testing, which we're going to be talking about pretty soon. But there are two different types of summative assessments. There is norm reference testing and there's criterion reference testing. And norm reference testing is just comparing your students' results to other students in that same age and grade development area. And that's like a SAT score or an IQ test. And then there is criterion reference testing, which is what most of us teachers are going to be doing because those are criteria where your students must reach. So we're going to be talking about the MSP, and that has a bar where the student has to reach this bar, and that's the criteria. And so we're comparing their score to the criteria.
Now let's talk about state and national testing.
All right. So for grades 3 to 8, they have to take the MSP, which is Measurement of Student Progress. This is assessed in the end of the year in the springtime, and it is only tested once a year. And it tests mathematics, writing, reading, and science. Only the science and math test can be given in a different language because we're more concerned about what they know. So if a student is an ELL student, then it can be translated into a different language for them because we want to assess their performance and their knowledge in that area. But the English and language and the writing cannot be assessed in a different language besides English. It is on a scale of 1 to 4. And so 3 and above is passing. Something to know about this is that if a grade student from 3 to 8, if they do not pass the MSP, they can move on to the next grade. They're not held back is what I'm trying to say, and which is different from the HISP. So high schoolers have to take the HISP, which is High School Proficiency Exams, and this is a graduation requirement. So if they do not pass, they do not move on. And this is only a reading and a writing section, because the math and the science are tested in the end of the year course exams that are very course related and specific to that specific class. Very specific.
Yes.
And interesting, on the OSPI website, I learned that the Washington State is changing their assessments. They're no longer going to be doing the MSP. In 2015, they're going to start a new thing called Smarter Balanced Assessments. There's not a lot known about these yet, but they're going to be more focused and related to the Common Core standards, which is really good. And they're also going to have components of critical thinking and problem-solving assessments. So that will be interesting because that's what we want our students to know. And the good thing about this is that they'll be related to the Common Core assessments and standards. So our state testing from Washington will be able to be compared to a different state that also has their assessments based off of the Common Core standards. So more comparison can be done.
The next big part of our presentation is about the home language survey. It's a really critical part if you're entering Washington State and you're going to any of the schools. Your parent or guardian has to fill out what your first language is. It's available in 26 languages, and it determines your WELPA testing. Next, we're going to talk about the big part of our presentation, which is about the WELPA, which is the Washington English Language Proficiency Assessment Placement Test.
So this is given to any student where their parent says on the home language survey that English is not their first language. And so even if the student comes in speaking English and they say, yes, English is not my first language, they have to be assessed. So there's two different tests. There's the placement test and there's the annual test. The placement test is given within 10 days of the student arriving in a Washington school, and it determines the eligibility for a student to receive ELD services, which stands for English Language Development Services. The test is untimed, and the student is given a score on a level 1 to 4, and we'll talk about the levels in a little bit. And interesting about this test is this test cannot be given in any other language. It must be given in English because obviously we are assessing how much the student knows about English. And so if a student replies, say you know Spanish, if the student replies in Spanish, even if they understand you and they reply in Spanish, you cannot accept that answer even if you understand them because we are assessing their English. So then they also take the annual test, which they have to take every single year as long as they are eligible for ELD services. And these, the annual test assesses whether or not they are eligible to continue ELL services. And so they are still on that level of 1 through 4. And these tests are given in February, which is interesting because it's the annual test, but it's given in February because the MSP testing is going on in the spring and they want to give students and teachers a break from so much testing because it takes all spring long to do those MSP tests. And then this test takes quite a long time, especially for the ELL specialist. They spend a long time on this test because it's very important.
And we actually learned that when we went to Allen Elementary last month. We actually walked in when they were doing WELPA testing, so it was interesting hearing what everyone was saying about it and what was thinking about it. So it was very interesting. That's what we started talking about.
It was a big deal, and the ELL specialists there could not even talk to us because they were so overwhelmed by how much testing they were doing.
It's an intensive time.
Yeah.
It's very intense.
All right.
So next we're going to talk about the 4 levels the WELPA determines. So level 1 is you're a beginning student. You cannot say very many things in English. And then as you develop...
You're at ground zero. You can say like bathroom, food, things that you really need to get by in English that are very important. Like if I went to France, I could say, where's the bathroom? How much does this cost? But that's about it.
And then you move into level 2, intermediate. And then you can start forming simple sentences, and then level 3, advanced, you can form a lot of sentences, but you're still working toward becoming proficient.
You're not perfectly grammatically, but the meaning is there. You can understand the meaning is there. You can convey what you're trying to say, which is good. And these students are almost at English proficiency, so they're almost where your normal English language speakers are, which is good. And then there's transitional.
Yeah. Yeah, that's level 4, so that's the highest you can receive. And that means that you are proficient in English, that you have gone through all the steps and you are proficient in English. And the important aspect of this is that when you're at level 4, you don't receive any English language development classes or skills or extra help. You're proficient in English, and so they're trying to move you along so that you can keep developing this second language.
We're keeping an eye on that student for 1 extra year until they test out of the ELD services through the WEPA annual test. So that brings us to accommodations.
So accommodations and modifications are to ensure that all students can perform their best on different testing, whether that be standardized testing like we talked about, or a simple spelling test that you have in your third grade classroom. It's making sure that all English language learners have the ability to show what they know, whether that be with English as a first language or not. It tries to mitigate some of the effects of that limited language skills. And so the accommodations I have below, it talks about like physical demonstration, which is like pointing at pictures or words, or one-on-one with an ELL teacher where an ELL teacher can guide you or a specialist can help you, or acting it out, or verbal and oral where you can have tests through audio devices, or you can have translations with the translator who's present in the room with you. Like that would be such a valuable experience and vital if you're taking a state testing and you are struggling with, as a language learner. And then we have written, which there's dictionaries that students can use, or you can have directions be in your native language. You can have translated CDs. You can have grammar devices. There are a lot of modifications out there for students that the state offers for ELL students, so it's important as teachers that we know that these are offered so that we can offer our students so they can succeed the best they can. And this relates a lot to Vygotsky's ZBD. So as a teacher, you want to make sure that you are teaching to your students' level. You're not trying to go incredibly far ahead or incredibly far below. You're trying to test and teach in that range so that they can learn and develop appropriately. And so this is important to remember so that we can help add those accommodations and modifications to help mitigate some of those problems with students who are having trouble speaking English.
And the students can also be given extra time, and they can be in a different location. Oftentimes they will be, if you're the ELL specialist, they'll be in your office. They have like folders up, manila folders up, so that only they're in like their own little zone, and you're there supervising. So we can give them a lot of accommodations, which is good.
So then as upcoming teachers, we put some examples on our PowerPoint. It talks about grammar devices that students are allowed to use, or translations and dictionaries they can have. It's important and vital that we know that these are available so that we can offer these to our students, because if you have one student in your classroom, you don't want them to be struggling on a test. Or if you have a classroom full of ELL students, you want to make sure you can offer these to everyone in class. So it's making sure that you know that these are available and that you can offer these. And then on our next page, we have, we just talked about translation and oral. And we found these all on the OSPI website, and so you're welcome to go look on there too and see what other accommodations they offer. This is the end of our presentation, and we found through our research that talking about assessment and how to evaluate ELL students is really vital. We learned about the modifications that we can offer to our students that can easily be applied to in a regular classroom on a classroom day, or on an important standardized test where students are going to be stressed out and really nervous. And so it's important as upcoming educators for ELLs that we can offer these services and that we can help guide our students to become English proficient.
Yeah, and as Christian was talking about the
Acquisition,
yeah, where he was saying if the comprehensive input is blocked, and by anxiety and other things, we can offer these modifications so that that anxiety is lowered and our students really can be acquiring language socially and in our classroom and learning, which is what we want to be doing as teachers.
So this is our Works Cited page. We went through a couple different resources. We found that the OSPI website was very vital in talking about the assessments that are offered in our state as well as the modifications. So definitely as an upcoming ELL teacher, we recommend that you check out that website and know what's available to you. Thank you so much. My name's Katelyn.
I'm Braelyn.
And this is our Spotlight presentation. Thank you so much for watching.
Bye-bye.
Bye.